Fire Emblem Fates Conquest is a game with amazing, tightly designed maps that offer the player a completely fair but still difficult challenge. So let's say we remove the fair part of the equation and gave every enemy 99 move, allowing them to ignore the well thought out maps and mercilessly hunt me down and kill me straight from turn 1. And since I'm not masochistic enough, I'll be attempting this on Lunatic Classic difficulty, and I won't be using rewards from this orb in my castle or use any of the DLC. So after creating my Corrin and picking a defense boon and magic bane, I began the prologue. So for this map, despite the fact that the enemies have 99 move, their AI is hard-coded to do the exact same thing as normal, except Sakura has 99 move for some reason. Anyway, after finishing off the Lancer, we moved on to Chapter 1, another chapter that is completely unchanged as Xander has the immovable flag, indicated by this line in his move. So he just won't move, giving us a free level and an easy win. Chapter 2 is where things start to get interesting. To begin the map, I move everyone to the right, placing Jacob on a pillar for increased defense and avoid. He was then charged by 4 enemies at once, and he didn't stand a chance. I now secured 2 kills on player phase, but that was not nearly enough, as I moved on to attempt 2, where I placed Corrin above Jacob to try to bait the attacks her direction, but she just kinda died. So I did this again with Gunter, but he also died, and we couldn't win from the position we were in. After a couple more attempts, it was clear. If I was going to survive the first turn, I needed a lucky dodge. So I replayed the first 2 maps again, this time with a male Corrin. So we now had Felicia rather than Jacob, who had slightly higher speed and luck for better avoid. And that 1 extra speed actually let her avoid a double from Kaze, making her perform slightly better than Jacob. But I now quickly realized that using this pillar for the extra avoid was a mistake, as it left Felicia susceptible to attacks at 1 range. So instead, I opted to use the Dragon Vein to place Felicia between Corrin and Gunter. Now the melee units couldn't attack her, and she just had to dodge one of the attacks coming her way for us to survive, which happened on attempt 11. But now I had to finish off everyone. With Gunter and Felicia, I killed Rinka, and Corrin dispatched a weak samurai. Here, I was completely fine if Felicia died, as I was sure Gunter and Corrin could finish the map from here. But fortunately, Felicia dodged 2 attacks from the Kodachi samurai, taking him down and setting us up to take Kaze down on the next turn. This map was now pretty easy to finish, but since this samurai dealt 0 damage, they didn't attack us. So I thought of a plan of using the healing from the heal tile to slowly heal the samurai to full, allowing me to attack them for a decent amount of EXP. When they stopped giving EXP, I could finish them off and move on to the next chapter, which initially was quite easy. I just paired up Gunter with Corrin, and together they managed to fight off both the samurai and the archers. Since they didn't deal much damage, this was reliable, and without any trouble the initially aggressive enemies were dispatched, but there was still the paired up samurai on the forts. So I moved up to fight them, but their archer ally ran at Felicia, placing her in range to die on the next turn. The samurai now doubled Corrin for high damage. To not game over, Corrin had to kill the samurai, and I had to sacrifice Felicia. Fortunately, deaths in the first 6 chapters don't matter that much, since everyone gets revived once we reach Branch of Fate. Anyway, Corrin could safely fight the remaining archers, and we were left with the boss, who was easy. But since Felicia was dead, I had to run back to the fort to heal Corrin if he took too much damage. With that, it was real simple to seize, fly into the ground, and arrive at Chapter 4. A really easy map, as by placing Corrin on a village with Rinka adjacent, 2 Faceless attacked them, and the rest suicided into Ryoma. For turn 2, Hinoka and Sakura died, and Rinka killed one of the Faceless on low HP, then another Faceless attacked and killed her. 2 attempts later, Rinka didn't kill a Faceless this time, and with Corrin and Ryoma, the remaining Faceless were simple to defeat. Next up was Chapter 5, which is ridiculously hard. All the enemies are very powerful, like everyone who isn't Corrin doesn't really stand a chance, as they all immediately die straight on turn 1. And Corrin doesn't really do that well either, since there are 3 Wormslayer mercenaries that can almost one-shot him. There are also these really strong mages, where there are 4 of them on turn 1, and 4 extras show up on turn 2. They each deal 7 damage, and Corrin can't counterattack on them. So, like, Corrin doesn't really stand a chance here. No matter how I positioned, my other units also didn't stand a chance here. The best I could come up with was on attempt 18, where I danced Corrin on turn 1 to take out one of the Wormslayer mercenaries. Somehow, Azura survived enemy phase phase, and that allowed me to dance Corrin to take out another Wormslayer mercenary. Then enemy phase happened and Corrin died. He took too much damage from the mages, which caused me to come up with a new plan. So I started a new game again, and this time picked Res for a boon and Luck for a bane to maximize the chance my Corrin would level Res. Now my plan is I would reset the first couple of maps until Corrin leveled Res on like every level until chapter 5, which will make the mages do around 2 damage to Corrin, which should make the map possible. Yeah, so Corrin's res growth is 40% with plus res, and since I'm playing on Lunatic, I can't reroll level ups by resetting. So I have to start a new game every time Corrin fails to level res, and at a 40% chance for res to increase, this took a long time. The first Corrin I had close to this was around the 4-hour mark, where I had a Corrin who leveled res 6 out of the 7 times, and this gave me the confidence to attempt chapter 5 again, where I determined it was still too difficult. But I did now have a basic plan to use when I got a very resistant Corrin, which was just dance Corrin to kill the Wormslayer mercenary, and use Separate to place Sakura here, which caused the mercenary to attack her from a space that Corrin could attack on turn 2. Then if Corrin was on low enough HP, the other mercenary would attack Corrin, and if he dodged here, he could take out all the Wormslayer mercenaries and just be left with the mages. Now, around the 6-hour mark, I managed to pick up a Corrin who leveled res on every level, but was a little below average in speed and defense. But that didn't really matter for chapter 5, where I attempted the map for about half an hour before getting a dodge on the Wormslayer mercenary. The mages now charged at him, and he just barely survived on 2 HP with 6 dark mages alive. The problem here is if I move Corrin, the dark mages will utilize dual strikes, and he'll just die. Ultimately, I decided that this strategy was not that great, and maybe a Corrin with more HP and defense would make this chapter easier. So I started new games again, hoping for better levels on Corrin. Around the 12-hour mark, I realized I had another high-res Corrin, but I also considered that chapter 5 would be much easier if I could squeeze out an extra level on Corrin. So I replayed chapter 3 and really utilized the fort's healing to maximize Corrin's EXP gain, allowing him to reach level 8 on just chapter 3, making me think level 9 was possible on chapter 4, but it wasn't really happening. Ryoma stole too much EXP to make it feasible to level again. I tried placing Corrin here to stop the Faceless from suiciding on Ryoma, but Ryoma still attacks on player phase, and prioritizes the level 4 Faceless that gave the most EXP. So after 2 hours, I gave up, and tried to figure out a plan to use on chapter 5. Since my new Corrin had higher HP and defense, my old strategy wouldn't work, as the Wormslayer mercenary wouldn't attack Corrin on the start of turn 2 enemy phase because they didn't kill. So I tried playing around with the idea of retreating Corrin into the choke points near the top left and top right of the map. At first, I wasn't really making progress, but then I came to a realization. By pairing up Kaze and Sakura, they could move right to this area here. Then by dancing Corrin, I could block this choke point from the other side. This would mean only 2 units could attack Kaze, who could survive 1 attack, but the second one would kill him. Dropping down Sakura, whose personal skill gave Corrin effectively +2 defense and resistance, so he could shrug off an attack from the unpaired up mercenary and take 0 damage from the mages, who were attacking at 1 range, since in the choke point there weren't options to attack from a distance. So this helped against the mages. Additionally, Sakura survived until turn 2 of the strategy, so she could heal up Corrin before dying. But if Kaze dodged once on the previous turn, then they'd have a guard gauge that would allow them to survive an extra turn, since this mercenary would attack first, since they one-shot Sakura, leaving a mage to attack at a distance that wouldn't one-shot her, letting her survive until turn 3 and keep supporting Corrin with the extra 2 defense and resistance, making the mages easy to kill. And with Sakura's healing on turn 3, Corrin had just enough HP to survive enemy phase, and could attack to kill the final Wormslayer user. Sakura and Kaze now died, but after using a vulnerary, Corrin was in the perfect position to fight the remaining units and reach the boss, who died to just 1 attack. And with that, the 17-hour struggle was finally over, and we could move on to chapter 6. But first, I used Branch of Fate to change Corrin's boon back to plus defense. As for chapter 6, I chose the conquest route and started my turn by misclicking and using a HP tonic. At first, I froze Ryoma with Elise since he was the deadliest unit on the map, and used Leo and Camilla to activate the Dragon Vein, so Xander could move back to help the rest of my team. I ended the turn by pairing up Corrin and Felicia. Elise now immediately died to Yukimura, and Hinoka charged at Leo. For turn 2, I just used Xander and Leo to take out Yukimura, and on enemy phase after Hinoka almost killed Leo, Ryoma began to move. Fortunately, he seemed to prioritize attacking Xander, which made it quite easy to take Hinoka down, and with a little luck and a Leo sacrifice, Ryoma also died. Takumi now finished off Xander, and I tried to take him out, but Sakura's heals made this too hard, and I ended up just killing her to end the map. Next up was chapter 7. For my first attempt, I just paired up Corrin, and unfortunately was one strength away from one-rounding the paired up Faceless, who will now seal Corrin's speed and drop 20% of his HP with Grizzly Wound. With the boss's Worry Fighter, Corrin also couldn't one-round them, and died shortly after. I now purchased a Strength Tonic since it allowed Corrin to one-round the Faceless. So I tried the map again, and we survived the first turn with relative ease. The problem came from our reinforcements that came on turn 3 and 4, as when they joined they were in a position to just immediately die, and I needed all the units I could get for chapter 10. Anyway, my new plan was to have Corrin head north to this choke point to take out the paired up Faceless, then by killing this guy to the south, I could bait in the boss and survive enemy phase. Silas and Elise would now appear, who I moved one space south to keep Elise safe and boost Silas with her personal skill. To the north, I switched to Felicia to build up a shield gauge, then Arthur and Effie appeared, who I paired up and used to block the lower choke points. From this point onward, the map was relatively easy. I just had to hold out in the choke points until the enemies died. What is worth noting, however, is using shield gauge just when units are about to die was extremely important, as this can bait in high priority targets like in Effie's case the powerful boss. Then I switched to Arthur, who was on full HP and could survive an enemy phase, then killed them with Silas to clear a relatively straightforward map. Since chapter 8 seemed quite difficult to do right now, it was the perfect time to do Paralog 1, where we just held our ground near the top right of the map while Mozu died immediately. The Faceless here don't have particularly good stats or any noteworthy skills, so I just had to heal when my frontliners were low to slowly dispatch them all, except the boss, who didn't move, who I beat by using dual strikes to weaken them with Felicia, setting up Effie to get the kill. On chapter 8, I looked at one of the Lancers and realized they don't have 99 move, so I tried to fix this, but the AI just broke. So I just instead added 2 additional Lancers, who can reach the other 2 villages on turn 2, to sort of replicate the fact that they have 99 move. Anyway, this map is pretty tough, since we have to face a combination of strong mages and fighters. At first, I tried placing Corrin and Silas here to block this choke point, and I had Effie try to hold this one. Unfortunately, this plan fell apart on turn 2, as when Niles and Odin appeared, I had to make sure they survived. That required Felicia to kill this guy and Effie to one-shot a maid, so Odin could move past her, and I switched him over to boost her res, but that just caused a fighter to kill her, and when one person dies on this map, like, everyone dies. So for my next try, I switched Corrin and Effie's position since Corrin one-rounded everything at one range with the Yatta, taking high damage but activating Silas's personal skill, allowing him to safely take out the mage, and receive an Odin pair-up for a res boost. While Effie moved down and to the right, and Felicia moved to Effie's old position, and she used the guard gauge to take 2 fighters. Unfortunately, on the next turn, I made a mistake with Effie, and lost because of it. A couple of attempts later, I suffered from another major problem on this map. You see, sometimes the mages can just suicide at one range, and since they have low speed and durability, it's easy to one-round them, allowing another enemy to take their place until you die, like with Effie here. Eventually, I found a solution to stop Effie from dying here, as if I paired her up with Niles, he would boost her res by 2 points, but more importantly, I could switch to him, and with his high speed, res, and Elise's personal skill, he could decimate the mages that attacked him with ease, and he didn't take too much damage from the fighters either, especially if I timed a shield gauge correctly. The only problem now was Odin and Silas, who were struggling to survive without Elise, who was busy helping Corrin and Niles, which is how this attempt lost. The solution to this was to really just make good use out of life-saving shield gauges, as they could bait in deadly attacks like the quick draw steel axe fighters, setting me up to kill them on the next turn, and this was pretty effective with Felicia, Niles, and Odin. When the fighters were all defeated, the map was significantly easier. I just had to clean up, and I had no trouble with Flora and moved towards the boss, whose name is like a D's nuts joke. With Felicia, Kilmer was pretty easy, but I wanted to give Odin some EXP, and I tried my best to give him the kill, but with Nosferatu, Vantage, and his high res, the boss was just too strong, and I gave up and just fed the kill to Effie. Chapter 9 is a pretty funny map. As you see Azura, one of the best units in the game, she's dead. There's no saving her. And with the enemies being composed of seal defense spear fighters, this map seemed tough. There was also Nyx that would be attacked on turn 1. If I didn't position like this to block this choke to stop the enemies from advancing. The only problem here is Silas wasn't that tanky, especially with his defense sealed, so he died. Before resetting, I observed Effie's damage, and if she had 2 extra strength, she'd one-shot the spear fighters and ignore seal defense. Then, after a few resets, I decided I should buy the strength tonic to make the map way easier. With this powered up Effie, I used Felicia's 6 move to advance her in front of Silas and pretty much just watched her deal massive damage on enemy phase. Other than switching Silas with Odin, the next few turns were pretty much just me slowly dispatching the aggressive enemies, trying to feed the EXP to Odin, who was leveling up quite nicely. Once they died, I could wait for the Shrine Maiden to run out of uses of Enfeeble and have Odin fight the archers for some extra EXP. Then I could open the chests, position Elise on the Dragon Vein, block the northern stairs, and trigger the reinforcements. For the sword users, I killed them with Effie and Silas, and for the archers, I dropped them to 1 HP with Elise, then cleaned them up with Arthur, Odin, and Niles. As for the boss Haitaka, I wanted to capture him for his good stats and rally defense. At first, I debuffed him with Felicia, lowered his avoid with Odin's Heartseeker, then dealt massive damage with Effie, setting up Niles to capture him, allowing Silas to seize and end the map. Next up was the dreaded Chapter 10. But first, I had an invasion I had to clear. That was pretty simple, I just maintained my position on the throne tile, and the enemies didn't really do much. After I cleared the map, I thought of a plan for Chapter 10 that required me to reload a save and replay Invasion 1. But first, I had to Heart Seal Effie into Troubadour, then Master Seal her into Maid with a recently purchased Bronze Dagger. I replayed Invasion 1 with my goal being to let Effie reach D rank in daggers. That was relatively easy to do. I then cooked a meal that gave Effie 2 speed and forged an Iron Dagger +1 that I tried to think of a funny name with sub in it and gave up and just called it Subscribe. After waiting a real life day to recruit Haitaka, I purchased some tonics and was ready to take on Chapter 10. And if you want to know why Effie is a maid, as you can see with tonics and an Arthur pair-up, she one-shots the ninjas even if her strength is debuffed. Additionally, she doubles and one-rounds everyone on the map, except Hinata, who's pretty hard to one-round. After promoting Elise for some extra defensive stats, I began the chapter. First, I used rally defense, then moved Effie and Silas up to block this choke, with Elise 2 spaces behind Silas, and 3 allies were near her to block the defend tile, as flyers will immediately capture the defend tile if it's unprotected. Corin then paired up with Felicia, and they blocked the lower choke. Enemy phase now began. The enemies rushed in, and I don't know why, but the spear fighters are now entering inside the ninjas. The ninjas are attacking at like 4 range, and Silas is attacking them back. I think since they're moving so much, the game is actually breaking. Like, throughout my attempts on this map, I've seen the enemies just like climb these buildings for some reason. They have also entered inside Effie that actually allows them to pass through her like she's an enemy, and they've used this to just immediately game over me. Sometimes they've even moved outside the map and just randomly game overed me for like no reason. These strange movement patterns have only ever happened on the first turn of this map. I don't know why they happen, but if you have a clue, you can let me know in the comments. Anyway, as for this first attempt, I survived turn 1, but Effie actually has too much defense, and because of this, some of the spear fighters are opting to break the lower wall rather than attack, which on turn 2 caused them to break through and capture the defend tile. Since Effie's defense was a major problem, I opted to just not rally her defense. That was effective at preventing the spear fighters from attacking the wall. The only problem is it caused them to just kill Effie. So I eventually decided to redo my preparations, and I kept the defense tonic in Effie's inventory for her to use later. With her defense reduced by 2, I could safely rally her to still bait in enough enemies for the lower wall to survive. For turn 2, Niles, Nyx, and Odin killed the flyers, and Effie dispatched Hinata. Silas then used the Master Seal to promote to Great Knight to bolster his defense, and at least kept him sustained, allowing everyone to survive enemy phase, and Camilla's squad arrived. Now obviously Camilla's really good, but since this map has archers on it, it's pretty risky to use her on the front line. Fortunately, right now there are no archers present, so it's safe for now, and this allowed me to push towards the right. My plan now was to use a rescue with Elise to block this choke to the right, but I miscalculated and lost on this attempt. Now because this map took me like 10 hours to beat, we're going to skip like 2 hours ahead to this attempt. My first and second turns were pretty much the same as last time, but on on turn 3, I had a new plan, so I moved Baruka 2 spaces below Effie and moved Camilla 3 spaces down. And I did this so on turn 4 I could transfer over Effie to Baruka to block the choke to the right. Now Silas paired up with Camilla and their plan was to kill Takumi, and this is where I had a problem, as Silas was 1 point of strength away from killing Takumi with a hit on player phase and enemy phase. And he was also pretty likely to die, since Takumi and the newly spawned axe users dealt pretty good damage. So this time, I couldn't attack him, but I needed to actually kill him on this turn, or else he'll use the Dragon Vein and then every unit can just rush the defend tile, practically guaranteeing a reset. I fixed Silas's strength issue with a strength tonic, and his durability was improved with a HP tonic. What also was a problem relating to Takumi is his elixir, as since Silas two-shots him, it actually puts him in range to use it rather than attack, and we needed him to attack, or he'll survive that turn and use the Dragon Vein. The solution to this is to just lower a random enemy to low HP, as they'll retreat and steal it to heal. With Takumi killed, I now had some other problems to solve. The first was Korin's survivability, as sometimes he was continuously attacked by a Poison Strike ninja, and it was really hard to keep him on enough HP to survive enemy phase. The second problem I had is a Baruka pair-up on Effie caused her defense to be a little too high to fight the ninjas, and her strength was too low to run around the Onis, as ideally she needed to be paired up with Arthur. My final problem was just what do I do with Camilla and Silas? As the turn after Takumi dies, archer reinforcements appear, so it was hard to use Camilla effectively. And Silas couldn't fight well either, since he was on low HP from fighting Takumi. And when the archers show up, some Poison Strike ninjas also appear, who just kinda chip him down. My solution to the first problem was easy. I just had to keep Elise adjacent to Silas on turn 3, as this would cause the ninjas attacking Korin to switch targets, and move up to attack her, who I could then dispatch on the next turn. Without Poison Strike damage wearing him down, Korin could hold this choke point much better. This plan also sets up for the second solution, as Elise would be closer to the front line, and I could use Rescue with her to move Effie 2 spaces up to hold the choke point with Arthur as a pair-up to help against the Onis. Another slight optimization I made is relating to Baruka, who on turn 6, when the Onis appeared, I rallied her defense and used her to take out the final remaining ninja. The Onis would now attack her and she could just barely survive and could move away on the next turn, and this helped keep Silas on a high amount of HP. Our final problem that needed solving was the turn where the final wave of reinforcements appear, mainly with what to do with Camilla, so I found an interesting plan of killing this ninja here, placing her in range of the archers on the other side of the map, but since they don't one-round her, the ninjas attacked first, at a distance, blocking the only space the archers could attack her, causing these archers to now attack Effie, and she would survive thanks to shield gauge. The final remaining enemies were pretty easy to take down, with one exception. These Onis who broke the upper left wall and charged at Effie, who survived with shield gauge. Now there was only one enemy remaining, who was simple enough to take down with Odin. Now my other units finally had the time to pick up all the rewards in the villages, with the 10,000 gold being the most important. After ending turn, the map was over. The next chapter, Chapter 11, was pretty easy, and mostly unchanged for this run, since you fight the enemies in these small rooms one at a time. For Setsuna room, I just rallied Odin's defense and equipped him with Nosferatu to steadily take every enemy out. The next area held ninjas and Kaze, so I just used Camilla, who obviously destroyed them all. I now moved Camilla over to Renka's room to chip down this ninja, allowing Odin to come in there and tank them all with Nosferatu. And I also Nos-tanked the mages near Izama. The middle area had a ninja and some life and death samurai, so I killed them with Camilla so now Korin could come in and pick up some EXP. For Hinoka's squad, I used Camilla and Odin to dispatch the flyers, then the 2 samurai and Shrine Maiden were defeated by Korin, and since Hinoka is pretty weak, Camilla had no problems killing her with a hand axe, ending the chapter. Chapter 12 features these powerful apothecaries with Spendthrift, and since archers in general were a weakness for Camilla, I decided to reclass her to sorcerer, so she could now still have her high speed and defense and not have to worry about the archers. I began this map by breaking this pot to boost Camilla's luck, then transported her over to this pot that boosts magic by 4. Across the next 2 turns, she dispatched all foes in the starting area, so we could move up and break a defense boosting pot, and use this area here to lure in Kagero, who Camilla wasn't that good at fighting, so I moved in Effie and Kaze to finish off the ninjas, and when they were taken out, I could break the pots and use Kaze to lure in the remaining 2 ninjas. With them taken out, I decided to refrain from the usual strat of heading up and to the right, and instead attempted to use Camilla to head straight for Ryoma, but she got silenced, debuffed by a ninja, and finished off by a spend Spendthrift Apothecary, so I was forced to reset. My strategy was pretty much the same for the next attempt until I got back to the door, where I was a little faster this time around, so I was confident I could reach Ryoma in time by heading through the upper door. Around this time, the reinforcement apothecaries showed up, so I left Odin behind to deal with them with Nosferatu. After pushing into the room just to the left of Ryoma, I had to wait for the silence user to run out of uses of the rod, then I could move Camilla in and start taking out the ranged units, like the ninjas and very powerful apothecary. Once that was finished, I could break the pot in front of Camilla, take out most of the one-range units, and position to take out Ryoma, who I dispatched with one attack with Camilla into a strike with Silas and a Kaze dual strike, ending the chapter. I now start chapter 13 by just deploying Corin and Camilla, and place her on a gate tile for the massive defensive boosts. On enemy phase, I realized that I have significantly underestimated Camilla's defense, as she takes very little damage from every enemy, and Nosferatu's healing makes it literally impossible for her to die. For turn 2, I switched to Thunder to increase her offensive capabilities, and she just kinda killed a bunch of enemies. But then Benny appeared, and I realized I should probably have equipped Thunder on turn 1 to kill more enemies, to allow him and Charlotte to survive this map. So I now did exactly that, and as expected, Camilla killed most of the mages, so Benny should have survived the next few enemy phases. But Camilla did not. The Cavs were a little stronger than I expected, so next time I lunged Camilla onto the gate tile, and it was pretty easy to wipe out the remaining aggressive enemies. Like the soldiers in chapter 7, this outlaw is hard-coded to have free move, so I just added a second one in who actually has 99 move, that Camilla intercepted by this village, allowing us to pick up some gold and a useless Blessed Lance. Then after feeding Corin some kills, we routed the map and moved on to chapter 14, where Garen groans in increasing discomfort, and I placed Leo paired up with Niles behind Camilla. Since there are these impassable tiles to his north and west, he can only be attacked from one range by one flyer, and at a distance the enemies don't really deal that much damage. So with a vulnerability to keep him healthy, we could hold out until the flyers gradually started to fall one by one, giving me the space to progress forward, clean up the remaining enemies, and open the chests with Niles. The boss was easy too. I just enemy phased them with Camilla, setting Leo up to secure the kill. For chapter 15, I promote and tonic up Corin since he pretty much has to solo this map. I began the map by misclicking and using the Dragon Vein, increasing the amount of enemies that can attack Corin, and he just dies. On my second attempt, I didn't use the Dragon Vein this time, and waited patiently for the one-range units to die. Then I switched to fire to kill the ranged units like the ninjas. Once that was done, I could activate the Dragon Vein, then position Corin so only 2 ranged units can attack him at once. Unfortunately, he was 1 strength off, 1 rounding the Lancers, so Corin's defense got sealed, so he had to switch to a Dragonstone for more defense. But then he couldn't kill anyone, and the seals and poison strikes were too much, and he died. I now remembered I had a Kodachi, and I used it to deal good damage on the ninjas to quickly kill them before they could poison strike Corin down. I also used Gunter with a javelin, who was pretty useful to finish off the ninjas if Corin was on low HP. Corin now pretty much just killed everyone, and I could advance to face the boss, who was easy and dropped a speed wing. For chapter 16, I buy a Nosferatu, forge it, and call it subscribe. This time spelled correctly to not bait you into commenting about it. Anyway, the chapter looks correct and was pretty easy. I just deployed Camilla and Beruka, using Beruka to transport Xander off the boat so he would survive. Then Camilla equipped Nosferatu, and literally she just killed everyone. She really just had to prioritize the strong enemies on player phase like the Berserkers to minimize damage, and they all died. So Beruka could fly down, allowing Xander to kill the stationary adventurers. Then we talked to all the Lancers and Shura appeared. Since I forgot he had Grizzly Wound, he could have killed Corin here, but he died and we stole his boots. Next up was chapter 17, the Ninja Caves, and it's a map that's relatively boring, as Xander could just block this choke point and the enemies couldn't damage him, except for the Life and Death Mechanist, who died to Odin, and in general this map was just an easy map to gain EXP on my lower leveled units, with mostly Odin and Effie taking the kills. And this was also a nice opportunity to gain support points, as I wanted Odin and Elise to reach an S rank support, so I could pick up the very useful magic on Ophelia's Paralog. Unfortunately, while doing this, I misclicked and Elise died. So I reset, and on my next attempt, I was a little more careful. After dispatching the final initially aggressive enemy, I lured in the Lunge Swordmasters with Camilla, and after taking them down, I could advance. Then the reinforcements appeared and they killed Camilla. So on my next try, I used a Dragon Vein to create a choke point over here and pushed up Xander to trigger the reinforcements. With Rally Defense and Gentle Home, Camilla was durable enough to survive. Then with these guys taken out, Kotaro was the only problem remaining. I first used Kaze to remove the Caltrops and sheltered him away. Then with Camilla and Xander, I gradually chipped him down. But I actually made a mistake, just as I was about to kill him. So I had to sacrifice Jacob. Then Xander threw a javelin and killed him, ending the map. Since I really wanted to do Ophelia's Paralogue, I attempted Invasion 2 with Odin and Elise as backpacks for Camilla and Xander, and when just one enemy remains, my plan was to switch to them to gain some support points together. But I ended up finding this map to actually be quite hard, as there were a few powerful mages and these really strong Spendthrift guys. Ultimately, it just came down to me getting lucky, and I realized that the AI prioritized attacking the units defending the throne. So I used this to make Camilla fight the Dark Knights who dealt major damage to Xander with his low res. With one final Dark Knight remaining, I could build an S-rank support and start Ophelia's Paralogue, where I realized that this guy doesn't have 99 move. So I fix it and begin the map by sending Xander and Ophelia north to pick up the Calamity Gate, and Camilla to the village to the southwest, to pick up like the best weapon in the game, Horse Spirit, which gives the user free skill, speed, defense, and res. Anyway, Corin now moved adjacent to Camilla with the Dragonstone for the extra defense, but he just kinda died. So I tried again, this time with fire equipped, and he still died, mainly because I have no way to heal him. So I bought some vulneraries and concoctions, allowing him to heal high enough to survive, while Camilla and Xander killed the threatening enemies. Eventually, the enemies just stopped attacking, so I had to move up and kill them one by one to end the chapter. In the My Castle, I now forged a +2 Fimbulvator, and I sneak a wacky word in its name, then attempt Percy's Paralogue, that I sweep entirely with Ophelia, as she has the magic to one-shot every unit on the map with a Sorcerer Elise Pair-Up and Magic Tonic. I never used this strategy again, and also to do this, Arthur had to die, but that was a funny map, right? Anyway, Chapter 18. This map is pretty easy. I just rallied Camilla and Xander, then placed Camilla to block the choke to the east, and Xander to block the choke to the south, with Elise behind Xander to bolster his low res with her personal skill and Demoiselle. Unfortunately, this didn't save him, and the mage destroyed him. Now this problem was easy to solve, as I had a talisman in my convoy, and the extra 2 rares let him survive this time around. As for Camilla, yeah, she isn't really having any trouble, even when enfeebled, so it was just a matter of time before every enemy died, and we could move up to fight the bosses. But before reaching them, some reinforcements appeared, so I had to place my weak units into this choke point, but Ophelia couldn't be protected. Fortunately, she didn't die thanks to a Vantage crit. Now Xander killed Zola, and Camilla and Ophelia could take out the generals for an easy chapter down. Chapter 19 is the funny furry map, where I reclassed Camilla back to Malignite to pick up Trample, and I tried to reclass Xander to Wyvern, but my game just crashes. After successfully reclassing him to remove his beast weakness, I began the chapter by just hiding my whole team in the bottom right. With rally defense, the foxes didn't really do much damage, so this was just a slow process of me steadily killing everyone. Near the end of the chapter, I realized why this map was so easy, as the way this mod works is I just placed every enemy into a duplicate class that has 99 move, and on this map I ended up doing this wrong, and some of the level 4 Ninetales were now weak level 4 Kitsune. Now I fixed this and replayed the map again, but the footage just looks like this for the next 2 hours, where I also cleared the next 2 chapters. Unfortunately, I didn't have a backup chapter 19 save, so we're now on chapter 20. Since, as I've said, I've beat this map before, I just dumped all my stat boosters into Camilla to make this map a little easier. And when I reach chapter 22, I'll switch back to my original save, where I didn't dump my stat boosters into Camilla. Anyway, surprisingly this map is soloable with a Malignite Camilla, despite there being multiple Kinshis on this map that can 2-shot Camilla. The important thing about these Kinshis is they have linked AI to the infantry units in their formation, so they don't initially move, which allows me to build up a shield gauge with the Falcon Knights and use it to nullify the most powerful Kinshi Knight, the one with the Silver Yumi. The rest are double, so she can block some of their attacks with shield gauges as well. making it pretty easy to dispatch the Kinshis. As for the rest of the map, it's really easy. The enemies don't even deal double-digit damage, so I could just slowly progress, pick up the second rescue, and fight Fuga, who Camilla one-rounded. Now, some reinforcements appeared, but I could just seize and move on to the Eternal Stairway. To make this easier, I reclassed Corin to General for better pair-up boosts, and paired him up with Wyvern Xander, and the two moved up to the escape points. Right now, Xander doesn't take any damage from any of the enemies. The only way he can die is if the boss activates Vengeance, who is now dead. Xander was now able to escape and end the map, but before leaving I wanted to kill the Faceless that gave EXP, so I did that and Xander is now at level 13, and I could escape to end the map. Corin now S-ranked Camilla so I could reclass her to General to just pick up like defense +2 because I thought it would be pretty good. I also reclassed Xander back to Paladin to pick up Aegis, hopefully on this chapter, but I had a problem keeping him alive as there were a lot of powerful mages who were just fast enough that Xander couldn't double them, so he was taking massive damage and they could survive and attack on a future turn, so he died on my first try. Fortunately I had another talisman again, but that didn't really save him, so I switched to a Javelin for weapon triangle advantage, but Hana just activated Rend Heaven twice, so he died yet again. On my next try, Hana didn't activate Rend Heaven and Camilla one-shot her with a dual club. Then it was just a matter of time before the mages died and the map should have been easy, and just free EXP. But I ended up having some trouble with the reinforcements, mainly just the mages, who could easily kill Xander. My solution to this was to have a Heart Seal ready for Camilla to use once she gained natural cover, so she could reclass back to Sorcerer and could easily hold this choke point to stop the mages in their tracks. Then with them gone, we could collect the Spirit Dust and kill Yukimura, who is not very strong. After seizing, I used an Eternal Seal on Camilla, so now she could gain 5 more levels, and I reclassed Laszlo to Master Ninja, so while paired up, he could gain a level to pick up Lock Touch to open the chests on Chapter 23. Like Chapter 22, the hard part about this map is just finding out how to make Xander survive, since there were lunges and magic users. My solution to this was to just equip Camilla with Subscribe, that can't double so she doesn't kill the enemies, so they now like to target her rather than Xander, and with its healing, she wasn't really at risk of dying. So we killed all the initial enemies, and what was surprising is Hinata's squad didn't move, so I had to run up to them for them to actually do anything, and they couldn't kill Camilla, so it was pretty easy. Now Camilla could enter inside the fort and equip Calamity Gate to take no damage from the Spearmasters, so they wouldn't lunge her. Then even with Weapon Triangle disadvantage, the archers weren't anything special. Camilla then killed them, and the remaining units couldn't even damage her, so she could kill them one by one, allowing Laszlo to pick up the chests. As for Takumi, he is one-rounded by Camilla. So I now did the Kana Paralogue, where she died and it crashed my game. Then I tried the map again and the boss crashed my game. Yeah, so I now just try to look at Kana and the game just crashed. Next time we didn't suffer any game crashes, and on turn 1 player phase, I killed 2 enemies on turn 1 and we easily survived enemy phase. Across the next 2 enemy phases we killed the rest of the map, and now finally Xander could reach an A+ rank with Laszlo, so I could reclass him to Hero to both remove his beast weakness and to eventually give him Soul to improve his survivability. Unfortunately, I couldn't deploy him for Chapter 24, as he just kinda kept dying, so I had to solo with Camilla, which was extremely easy to do. The most damage the enemies could do to her was like 10, so we reached Hinoka, who dealt 2 damage, but had a chance to activate Luna for an extra like 18 damage. It didn't really help her, and she switched with her Oni backpack, who I killed, and then she was way easier to fight, and I seized to end the chapter. Next up was Chapter 25, where Corin had to fight Ryoma in a duel, so I purchased some Bronze Lances and forged them to +2 for decent might and great hits, and named it 20 in small letters. I then began the chapter and had Corin attack Ryoma until he died. Then I made some minor adjustments to Corin's skills, causing Ryoma to deal much less damage thanks to Wary Fighter, making it a pretty easy fight now. Once Ryoma kills himself, we start Chapter 26 by just deploying Xander, but he gets entrapped and frozen, and I realize I should probably also deploy Camilla to help him out, which ends up being effective, allowing her to dispatch the heroes. Then I transported her over this door with the mate entrapped, but she dies because she was hexed by a maid on like turn 1, so I replayed the map and killed them on turn 1 to prevent them from hexing Camilla. But I ended up making the mistake of placing Xander in range of Iago on turn 4, which if you don't know how his AI works, he uses Enfeeble on turn 1, Freeze on turn 2, Silence on turn 3, and Hexing Rod on turn 4. This order then repeats, so it's easy to predict what debuff he will use. With a Hexing Rod debuff, I was unsure if Xander could solo the Southern Room, but I still pushed left with him, killed the 2 Faceless and the Stoneborn, then he was entrapped. After dispatching the maid, he learned Soul, which helped him sustain himself against the enemies in the next room. The most deadly enemy here was Hans, who had high damage and crit, but with a shield gauge, Xander ignored that and ended the combat with a crit of his own. So this lower room was pretty simple, and the real problem was Camilla, as the Faceless reinforcements broke the door down and started to attack her until she just died. So this time I placed her in this room near the top of the map, so only one Faceless could attack her at a time. While she stalled, I used lunges to move despite the maid's freezes with Xander, allowing him to kill one of the maids. Then with many injured units, the other maid chose to heal rather than freeze, so Xander was free to kill them too, and move forward with a shield gauge to fight Iago, while Camilla had switched with Corin to survive longer. Xander could now attack, but his accuracy wasn't great, and he was hexed, so Iago could one-shot him. Fortunately, a lucky crit smashed Iago to pieces, allowing Xander to seize. Chapter 27 is pretty easy. It just took a long time to kill all the enemies. The only units that were scary were the Spendthrift guys and the paired-up Spearmasters, but once they were killed, we could move on to Garen, who I tried to kill with Xander, but his healing was way too much. Xander didn't really stand a chance, so he died, and next time I used a strength tonic. Debuffed Garen with Draconic Hex, and now Xander could outpace Garen's healing and successfully defeat him, meaning now we had reached the final chapter. Unfortunately, I didn't have anyone with pass, so a turn 1 victory wasn't happening, but I still wanted to experiment and see how the map would play out if I rescued as far down as possible. So I had a high move unit rescue my Xander, then I traded the rescue to Effie to rescue another rescuer who rescued Xander as far south as possible. As you would expect, on enemy phase, my support units quickly died, and I started to identify the main problem here, the Enfeeble users with inevitable end to stack debuffs. With at least 2 uses of this, any unit would be practically useless and could not survive enemy phase. But maybe if I could dodge the Enfeebles, I could make my way past them and reach Takumi. So I tried the same plan again, this time with Camilla, who had better res for higher avoid on Enfeeble. I also used a high move unit to move Xander down to try to bait the Enfeeble users to target him. This kind of worked, but Camilla wasn't able to reach Takumi on turn 2, so she just died, confirming the theory that with my current team, it was impossible to rush the boss. So for my next try, I moved back with Camilla and Xander, and tried to hold the throne to the far north. Most units attacked into Xander, but with his good avoid and souls to keep him sustained, there were no problems, and he easily survived the enemy phase. But turn 2 is where it got a little tricky, as Takumi charged up his big AoE attack that deals half of Xander and Camilla's max HP as damage, so I was pretty much forced to fully heal here before this attack if I wanted them both to hold out. Fortunately, since most of the mages died on turn 1, this turn was relatively safe, and we were free to clear out the remaining units until turn 5, where these guys showed up, the Infinite Reinforcements. Fortunately, during enemy phase, I noticed that these guys don't move. Why? Well, it's because they have low attack and can't actually damage anyone, which got me thinking, if I waited long enough, the enemies would reach the unit cap of 50, and if most of those enemies were these useless faceless, I'd have more than enough time to take the map at my own pace. So I waited until they reached the unit cap, and now was the time to move up. But I now realized that with the mate Enfeebles, they would debuff me if I moved forward, and if I was debuffed, the faceless would start to damage me and attack. So right now, if I advanced forward, I'd just die. Before giving up, I observed that Camilla was one move away from reaching the furthest north Enfeeble user, whilst staying out of their range. With that knowledge, I was happy to end this attempt, as I thought I now saw a path to victory. So I reclassed Corin to Great Knight with the extra point of move on pair up, then made various other changes so I could execute a new turn 1 strategy, where on turn 1 I would rally Ophelia and Kana, then Flora would enfeeble the lower right maid, allowing a rescue to place Ophelia in range to double and 1-round them. Then I rescued Kana down, who just barely killed this other enfeeble maid. Now everyone died and it was down to Camilla and Xander to finish the map, who obviously survived until the initial rush of enemies was gone. Then I could move down, try to weaken this ninja to make the freeze maid heal, but Xander just crit, so that that didn't work. With 9 moves, Camilla could kill an enfeeble maid, and now I just had to avoid this enfeeble right here to beat the map. That didn't happen. She also got frozen, and the Faceless could deal damage to her now, and they killed her. I now considered reclassing Camilla to Dark Knight for the 3 more defense, so in that situation the Faceless wouldn't damage her, but doing so would reduce her speed to the point that she couldn't double. So I tried the map again, and made some small optimizations first in chapter 27. Where I built up Xander's axe rank so he could use a hand axe. This allowed him to safely attack the ninjas on chapter 28, as if the ninjas do damage, they'll start to attack, but with weapon triangle advantage, a debuffed Xander wouldn't take damage from them, making it safe to attack them so the freeze maid would heal. The only other change I made is Camilla used Horse Spirit to kill the maid, and had a shield gauge ready to nullify the counterattack. Now Camilla dodged the enfeeble thanks to her extra res from Horse Spirit, then the freeze maid healed, and then Camilla could position here in front of 2 enfeeble users, and healed since Takumi used his big AoE on that turn. Because the Great Masters dealt damage, they attacked rather than debuffed, securing Camilla kills on all 3 of them. Now I just had to move north to kill the Freeze Maid and the Master Ninjas. Then, just one enemy stood in my path to victory, Takumi. With Xander's higher defense, I figured he'd be the better unit to engage him rather than Camilla, and what I immediately noticed here is Takumi has no healing, so I could keep retreating and healing with each attack until he was on low HP. Now, our run's carry landed the final blow, and we beat the game. The carry was Xander. Anyway, this challenge was pretty fun, until I got to the point of the game where I had Camilla, who could easily solo like every map until endgame. So most maps became pretty thoughtless, and generally speaking, I'd say I had the most fun with chapter 10, since I felt like across my time playing that map, I made a lot of small adjustments, and it felt fun to finally figure out a solution where I routed the map and got all the rewards. If you enjoyed, like the video, subscribe, and if you want me to do more 99 move challenges, you can tell me in the comments what game I should do next. See ya, bye.